Hi, good afternoon, folks. Johnny Johnzel, solo podcaster speaking. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the cultural differences between Mexico and USA when it comes to the work environment. And I'm going to touch in a little bit about the stereotype that Mexicans are the superior workers when you compare them to the American-born Hispanics, white, blacks, whatever you want to say, American-born. And I'm going to get down to the roots of that, and then I'm going to discuss their advantages and their disadvantages, as well as American-born people's advantages and disadvantages. And so as we all know, that people in Mexico begin to work full-time jobs, if not two jobs in Mexico, from a really young age, some as early as 7. So they begin their work journey from the age of 7. Usually to help provide for their family, right? And they're taught to work around the house, you know, just fixing stuff around the house, cooking, going to work with their parents. They get to work alongside with their parents, you know, in some cases, and doing physical labor work most of the time. And so, like in Mexico, school is considered a privilege. Like, you have to be a privileged individual to be able to, so your family could be able to afford to send you to school and not put you to work. And so that's in Mexico, right? So school and education is a privilege, and it's not entitled to everybody. The majority of the people that come here obviously didn't have that luxury, otherwise they wouldn't be here. And full-time jobs at the age of 7, and then here in the USA at the age of 7, Americans are forced to be into school. You know, the government requires us to do 12 years of schooling from kindergarten, if not preschool, from kindergarten K through 12, and we're required to obtain a high school diploma, or nowadays you can get a GED, which is a lot faster in some cases. So keep in mind that going to school for 12 years, starting at a really young age, I mean, sitting down and focusing at a table with kids you don't know, being away from your parents, and having to learn, you know. So I remember going to school and starting school. My first days of school, I was always scared, like, or nervous, you know, that I wasn't around. My parents weren't gonna be there. I'm around a bunch of kids I don't know, and then I'm gonna have to start learning and stuff like that. So that kind of stuff, it's easy at first. It seems easy, but it's really not. At that age, like, you're outside of your comfort zone. When you start school, you really just want to be home with your family and be able to just hang out, right, with your parents and stuff. But so we're forced to go into school and learn and obtain knowledge and go to school for 12 years, you know. And it's a lot of responsibility, having to do homework, waking up on time, being dressed, and you know, and at first when I was little, I didn't really see the point of it, you know. It was kind of like torture. But now that I'm an adult, I see how schooling is very important. It teaches you a lot of responsibility and stuff like that. It teaches you how to be social and how to read and write. Basically, reading and writing, English is the basic necessities. It's an absolute necessity in the United States to learn how to read and write if you want a good, decent life, if you don't want to be stuck in a field. Legally, our parents cannot send us to a full-time job or to work until the age of 16, I believe. At the age of 16, you're able to obtain a permit from your city or community and get permission to work. And I think that the requirements are that you don't work more than 20 or 25 hours per week. And so you have to have and it can't be like heavy work and stuff. It has to be something like a blue-collar job, like retail and stuff like that, restaurants. That's just the way it works here in the States, California at least. And it's fine. I'll get down to the importance of why and how that's a good thing. But of course, when I was 16, I began to work. Actually, I began to work when I was 13 as delivering newspaper. And then I kind of just focused more on school, obviously, and then went back to work when I was 16. But I would only work during the summer or after school. If it were up to me, I would have worked full time. But you know, the law here in California, if you don't send your child to school and you send your child to work full time, that's childish cruelty, endangerment. You can go to jail for that. Your parents can be arrested for stuff like that. You could be taken away from your home and put into like foster care. So people from Mexico having to have worked since the age of 7, physical labor, and you know, having to go to work and really like sweat and, you know, actually work and get dirty and be bending over in the fields perhaps, or doing construction, whatever it is that they may be doing. It, you know, that's physical stress and exhaustion, but and tend to look at people born in America that had to go to school at that age, forcefully and rightfully. So looking at people that had to go to school at that age, they look at us, you know, Americans, the people that grew up in America, as privileged. And there's always some type of animosity towards that. You know, for example, like I said, my stepdad, he started working at age 7, and when I was 7, I was playing around with toys after work, after school. I'd come home and play with my toys, and I'd have maybe a little bit of homework, and then he would sit there and just talk about how I had it easy, you know, kind of putting me down in a way, in a sense, nicely, that when he was my age, that he didn't have time to be sitting down and playing, and he had to work. I remember him always saying that, and I've heard that from numerous, you know, Mexican nationals talking about that. They tend to bring it up, you know, especially like members of the family they come from Mexico, and they always talk about how we have it so easy here, that when they were our age, they had to work. So it seems easy, like to sit there. It's easy to sit there and point the finger at someone that has to sit down, right? You would think that, oh yeah, well, you're just at a desk and you're sitting down. Well, the thing is, like, you really have to learn. So you're sitting there, and you're sitting at a desk, right? But you're using your mind, you're using your brain. It's a different kind of work. So you're working your brain. So you're having to learn English, proper spelling, where to put your commas, where to put your periods, and when you get it wrong, your teacher sends it back to you with all these markings. Learning math, the introduction of division, multiplication, then algebra. You know, all these new things and new little milestones that you're forced to achieve. It's not so easy. I was always stressed out mentally. So I would always feel exhausted after school. So I would always feel exhausted after school. And then after school, I had to do homework and turn it in. At the end of the week, I had to do little quizzes here and there for your teacher. And then you know, having to sit there and watch her fail you or pass you, it's really stressful. It's really mentally exhausting. It's a different kind of work. So our government requires us to go through that for 12 whole years, mandatory, right? And I'm not gonna sit here and say that I did it, because I remember I dropped out of high school for a little while, and I had to work, you know. But I always knew that I always felt incomplete. I always knew that I had to finish this. You know, I had to go back and get my GED or my diploma. You know, I had a child. I told myself, how am I gonna push education on my child if I myself couldn't even complete high school? So I told myself that I had to go back. You know, I went back. My son was probably about 4 years old when I went back, and I decided to get my GED. Yeah, it didn't really pay off, you know, getting the actual GED. But I'm gonna get into where the art of studying and learning how to study properly and obtain information and retain information, how it became beneficial and gave me an advantage over those who had to start working at a young age and stuff like that. But I'm gonna get into the advantages that gives Mexican nationals, Mexican-born people. So I'm 30 now, right? In my 20s, I was working at lower level jobs, middle class jobs, you know, construction, tree work, production, kitchen work, things like that, right? And those are jobs that don't really require a lot of education. Although California requires you to have a GED and speak English and stuff, that's not always the case. So working at all these jobs where a lot of Mexican nationals tend to be working at. So in my 20s, I remember working at warehouse jobs, and there was a lot of Mexican nationals there. So Mexican nationals that are my age, right? We're both 20 years old, and he comes from Mexico, and I'm over here, and I come from the United States. So he started working at the age of 9, I believe. So he started working at the age of 9 alongside with his dad, doing odd jobs. He said for around his house, helping his mom cook, and literally like picking the food out in the fields, you know, skinning goats and cooking them and all this stuff, right? And working in the fields and then repairing the house, plumbing, and just construction, stuff like that. And this is by the time, so this is when he was 9. So 9 years old, he started working full time, didn't go to school, and you know, I didn't have that luxury of working, right? Because I had to be in school legally. at that age of 9. So I didn't start working until I was 16, and I started working at a restaurant as a busboy. And so that's not a very heavy job, right? But it does require you to know English and some basic math. You know, you have to run the register and stuff and count tips and stuff. So so where I'm getting to is when we were working at the warehouse, the Mexican nationals there, they were outworking me. So they were outworking me, and they were just making it seem really easy. And I felt belittled, and I'm very competitive, so I was trying to keep up with them at this time, and it was very hard. It was just everything was very hard. Like, so the advantages that they had on me was that they had started working when they were 9, and here we are 20. So they have 10 years of work experience above me. So they have 10 years of work experience, especially in physical labor, such as the warehouse. So they were able to outwork me day in, day out, and it got to a point where I felt belittled, and it was because of their little comments. You know, este pocho no sirve para nada, este vato es bien huevón, you know, and just like, ira así de fácil, you know, just correcting me and just making it seem really easy, belittling me, right? And man, it was very frustrating, because no matter how hard I try to work and how hard I try to focus, they always outworked me. And so then I realized, like, man, well, these guys, you know, it took me a while to understand, you know, and then I started believing the stereotype that, man, Mexican people are the superior workers. They really do outwork us Americans. And now I got to the bottom of why and how that is. And so now the reason why is because in their country, at a young age, education is a privilege and work is mandatory. Basically, if you want to eat, you basically have to work when you're a child. So that's what happens. They begin to work as a child, and they're building all this work experience. So by the time they come here to the United States, where hard work like that pays off, to a sense, they're able to outwork. They're able to outwork me. And then to me, I've always felt like, man, that warehouse job, man, they didn't even pay me enough to work the way they were working. But they come from a third world, so they're working as hard as they did just to eat over there. But here they are over here getting paid with actual money to work just as hard. So you see how the cultural differences. So in the culture of the United States is education first, and working is a privilege that you got to earn, and you got to be at a certain age. And then in Mexico it's the opposite. Working is mandatory, and schooling is the privilege. So you know, what's going on in California, at least where I could see, because I don't want to speak on the whole United States, because I ain't everywhere. I'm only in California. So in California, I see every company I've gone to, whether it be in the kitchen, whether it be in a production job, warehouse, construction, you know, Mexican nationals are always outworking the American-born people. Whether you're white, black, Asian, Mexican, but if you were born here in the United States, I'm guaranteed 9 times out of 10 you're being outworked when it comes to physical labor. So you're being outworked physically, and because they have 10 years of work experience on anybody their age that's born here in the United States. And you know, it's easy for them to get cocky and confident in the workplace and put down people, and that's why you have the stereotype of people born in America are lazy. It's not that we're lazy, it's just that we're conditioned to learn. We're conditioned to think with our mind more, and not as opposed to bending over and breaking our backs. And don't get me wrong though, there are Americans that do break their backs. I happen to be one. Now that I'm in my 30s, I have more work experience now, and I utilize that, and I'm able to keep up with the Mexican nationals whenever I am put to work with them or alongside with them, no matter what it is I do. The one thing that gives me the advantage is, you know, the thing is, you know, if for those of you who work alongside a lot of Mexican nationals, know that they've been at whatever company they've been there for 10 plus years, and that's because it's easier for them to just stay there and work, as opposed to having to start all over, go through an interview, and fill out an application, or fill out an application online nowadays, right? So there's where I have the advantage of learning how to read and write. So I know how to read and write in English. So therefore, if I don't like a job, I could up and leave. And I tend to be, and people born in America tend to be jumping from job to job, and that could be a good thing, or it could be a bad thing. To me, it's a good thing, because I've never left a job and ended up at a worse job. I've always, if I don't like a job and it doesn't pay me well, the work's too much, it doesn't balance out the pay, then I up and leave, and I don't hesitate to fill out a new application at another place where the pay is better and less work, perhaps, right? Because I did grow up here in the United States. I'm not conditioned to work in fields and just break my back like that, right? So there goes my advantages. And the thing is, it's not the Mexican nationals' fault that they come over here and they outwork us. It's not really their fault. It's the employer's fault. Here in California, employers, you're required, on applications, you're required to know English. They ask you, are you bilingual? And you mark yes or no. During, you go through an interview. In some cases you don't. And then you're asked that you show proof of education, that you have to at least have a GED or a diploma or something, right? Well, the thing is, jobs in California, employers in California have kind of steered away from that and don't really require that. So I agree that it is kind of discriminatory to ask for like legal documents to work here, like in the United States, but I don't think it's discriminatory to ask for an education or the ability to learn English or to know English, I mean, right? Especially being that California, in my community at least, in my community in California, they provide English classes for agricultural workers, people, undocumented, non-English speakers, right? They provide you with the ability, they provide you a school at night, or they have morning, afternoon, and night classes where you can go in for a couple of hours and learn how to speak English, right? And those classes, because I went to an adult school, and the classes next to the adult schools were those classes, and those classes had the capacity for 35 people, maybe 40. And there was always only like 5 or 6 people in there, 5 or 6 Mexican nationals trying to actually learn and write in English, and I applaud them. It shows respect. You come into a country that's not yours, and you're trying to learn their language. It just shows respect, and it shows a lot about the people that were in there trying to learn, and it should the actual mindset that they have, that they're trying to learn and expand their mind and expand their vocabulary. It's gonna take them a long way, and I'm gonna get into that later on down on this channel, on this episode. So they have all these grants that offer free education and free classes, right? Free English. The adult school was offering free English classes, and I understand that a lot of migrant workers are tired after work and they have to cook and all this stuff. There's no excuse, because when I went back to get my GED, I was 24, and I was working a swing shift job that went in at 12 afternoon, and I would get out at 11:30 at night or at midnight sometimes. And so I was going to school for 2 hours a week studying, and then every few weeks I would go and try to take one of the tests, and I passed all those tests eventually, the math, English, English literature, science, all that, and I passed. I was able to get my GED, math, and stuff like that, and I had a child, and I also had a full-time job, that I worked overtime, and believe me, I was exhausted, but this was just something I felt that I had to do. And when I was younger, I didn't really think too highly about education. I kind of resented it a little bit because it just never paid off, or I didn't see how it paid off. But now that I'm older, I see how it kind of paid off. And then when I'm working alongside with the Mexican nationals, I could just feel that, at least, when I work at a place, like, I have the ability to fill out an application, and I don't got to ask my kids, or I don't have to ask somebody to fill it out for me, or ask them what they're asking for. I had the power to just go up and apply for another job and get out of the company that I'm in because I'm unhappy. And then, so that's where education pays off. Those 12 years that the government required me to go and sit down and learn all these things and countless. The thing that I got most out of going to school from K through 12 was how to study, how to take notes, how to retain information and apply that. It's not the actual math and reading and writing. Well, the reading and writing is big in English and all that. It's the actual, like, art of studying. Like, I know how to study. I know what I got to do to study and retain information. And so that's the advantages I have. But I got the hands-on experience, and I'm able to weld now, and I know the dangers, and I know how to protect, and I know the process of sanding and grinding and TIG welding, MIG welding, the differences of arc welding, underwater welding. I learned all that stuff, and it required a lot of math, so that's where that came into, basic math and some algebra and geometry. But that was good for me to learn all that. And then but the ability to want to learn and obtain information to further my education or my skill sets required studying. So I had to study I had to read books on welding and all that. So not only that, but then I took it even a step further, and I got a trade on. I learned a trade. Basically, I got my commercial driver's license, and people think that that's easy, whatever, and it's not so hard. But the thing that makes it hard is if you don't know English, or if you don't know how to study and sit down and focus. If you don't know how to sit down and focus and read, then you're not gonna get your commercial driver's license, because that's a test where I'm talking. There's booklets on it. There's booklets, and there's different sections, and then there's hands-on, and then there's the actual drive. But before you could even get to the actual hands-on and actual drive, anybody can drive a semi, I believe, if they really tried it. But the thing is, not anybody could just sit there, focus, and read and pass the 150 questions that they ask you. You see, when you get your regular Class C license, it's only 18 questions. When you're trying to get your commercial license, it's about 125, if not more, questions. And the laws change every year, and you got to learn those new laws. It's up to you to learn those new laws, or you could lose your license. So it's constantly, so the fact that I know how to sit down, and study and retain information, not to mention read and write in English, gave me that ability to be able to pass that barrier and get behind the wheel of a semi, and ultimately get licensed. So I chose to do that as a career, and there's a lot of Mexican nationals that do that. The reason of this video, of this part of this segment of the video, is so that Mexican nationals can realize, stop putting American-born people down for being unable to work in a field. And you know, it's not our fault that we're forced to sit down and get an education. We didn't choose to get an education, we were forced to. Basically, it's not a privilege. I understand in Mexico that it's a privilege. Here in the United States, it's not a privilege, it's a responsibility for kids and their parents to get sent to school, and to send your kids to school. And it's a good thing. It's a good responsibility to learn. It teaches you good things and the basics, and it's not even about the GD or the diploma. It's about learning. It's about learning how to read and write, just basic things that you need to get through life, you know, easily. And you know, so Mexican nationals, there's no need to put us down because you are superior in physical labor. Because on Instagram, I seen someone post a meme, and it was about, like, how it was basically about what this topic is about, which kind of motivated me to do this topic. So Mexicans say that they are the superior workers, the American-born people are lazy and they wouldn't last a day in the fields. Yes, that's true, but at the same time, look at it like this. You won't see, the reason why you won't see an American-born person working in the fields for a living is because that's not what he was conditioned to do. He was conditioned to learn, sit down at a desk and get educated, so he could not have to do that. So if I hear this all the time, I want to see an American work in the fields. Okay, an American could easily say, well, if you want me to work in the fields for a living, I want to see a person that worked in the fields all his life from Mexico, in Mexico, sit down at a desk for 12 years and obtain a diploma. You're not going to see that. You're not going to see a 40-year-old person that's been working in his fields all his life stop that and seek a diploma. You might, very rare, but I'm talking about the majority of cases. You're not going to see a Mexican national that's worked in the fields all his life start going to school. And you're not going to see an American that's been in school all his life start working in the fields. It's just a cultural difference. Nobody's better than the other. We're not better than Mexican nationals, and Mexican nationals are not better than Americans. It's just a cultural difference. Notice that. Stop insulting each other, because it's two different worlds that we're living in, and they're combining, and it's been a struggle, and we're pointing fingers at each other, and it's not right. You know, Mexicans are not the harder workers. They're just more experienced, and that comes from their culture and how things are being ran in Mexico. And it's not that Americans are lazy. It's just that we're focused. The government is forcing us to focus more on learning and obtaining information. So whether that's a good or bad thing, it's up to you to decide. That's the first part of the segment. So the point of this part of the segment is to just recognize you're not going to see someone that worked in the fields 40 years stop what he's doing and start trying to get a high school diploma. And you're not going to see someone that went to school all his life stop what he's doing and work in the fields. Two different things. It ain't okay for people to say that Americans are lazy. Mexican nationals cannot say that people are lazy, because it is hard work waking up and going to school for 12 years. It wasn't easy going to school and sitting down at a desk learning all these new things for 12 years straight. Yeah, I'm aware that people came 12,000 miles to cross a border for a better life, but what the government had us do for a better life is sit down and go to school for 12 years. See, that's a 12-year process. You know, you can cross a border in about 2 weeks. Getting a high school diploma, that'll take you 12 years. So that's food for thought. So nobody's better than nobody. We're all here trying to make a better life. Some people are getting a better life through bending over in a field, and some people are getting a better life through sitting down and pushing pen and paper in a classroom. Okay. So now that I got that out the way, I just want to kind of talk about how I went to a George Lopez. I went to go see George Lopez, the comedian, live in Saratoga, California. That's over there by San Jose in the Bay Area. And I have a lot of respect for George Lopez. And the thing about that is that the thing that kind of made me think different is that George Lopez, towards the end of his show, he said, you know, he was talking about Trump and all that, and he said how one day there will be a Mexican president. That part I believe he was correct on. One day there will be a Mexican president in the United States, a Mexican American president. But then he went and said, and when that happens, things will be better for our people. That part is where I disagree with him. So he's over here implying that when we get a Mexican American president, the chances are, if that happens, yeah, he's gonna legalize all the undocumented people. Yeah, and that's fine. The thing that the thing that Americans and Mexican nationals get misconstrued is that the Mexican nationals are starting to look at the fact that they're undocumented as a disability, as a handicap. And that's not even the case, because I know, obviously in school you see the kids on the wheelchairs, they can't even talk. They're still in school, they're still being forced, you know, and these people are in wheelchairs and they're basically vegetables, but they're still forced to go to school and learn and sit at a desk and all that. They're going through the process just like anybody else. So if those people can do it, undocumented people can do it. But like I said, people that are undocumented, people that come from Mexico as adults, they don't tend to have the ambition or the drive to learn or educate themselves, the majority of them. And that's the thing. So if you know, because let me get into this real quick. So I work for a tree company, and the owner of the company, it's a big company, they get contracted by PG&E and all that. So the owner of the company is an undocumented immigrant from Mexico. And he's the owner of a company, and there's about 120 employees. The thing that separates that immigrant from the rest of them, is that he learned how to read and write in English, and he applied for a business license, and he took the time to learn a trade, which is cutting down trees and charging. Not only that, but learned how to charge them, learned where to get the equipment to start his own business, or how to apply for a business license. He learned all that stuff. He learned how to read and write English. So basically he took it a step. I don't know if he got his diploma or what, but the fact is that he took the time to learn, and now he's a business owner. And then when I'm talking about when I was in adult school, how there was only 5 or 6 occupied seats in a 40 to 35 room classroom where they were teaching people to speak English. That's what I'm saying is, so the fact that being undocumented didn't stop him from going out and starting his own business, right? That's the American dream, and I believe he's a homeowner and all that stuff, and he's undocumented. So the fact that you're undocumented is where I'm getting to. If there is ever a Mexican president and he legalizes all the undocumented people, that's not going to do anything for you. I guarantee you that, because people have been here for 20 or 40 years and have not learned how to speak English or write or read. So let me tell you something. If you don't have the ability to sit down and learn the language of a country you're in, you're not going to get far. You could be legalized all you want, but if you don't know how to read and write English, I guarantee you're going to be at the same spot you're in. You know, I could already picture it right now. Ya pa qué? Ya, no. You know, people are going to be sitting in the field still working. Ya pa qué? You know, they're legalized, so they're going to say, ya pa qué? Why even try to get a new job? Why even try? So don't sit around waiting for a Mexican president to come and make your lives better. You know, that's not going to happen. You can be legalized all you want. There's so many people that are legal to work in the United States, but if you don't have that drive or the ambition to learn a trade or learn English or Spanish or speak or write, if you don't have that drive to sit down at a desk and the discipline to sit down and study If you don't have that ability to focus and learn and educate yourself and empower yourself, I don't care if you're legal or undocumented or documented, you ain't going nowhere. You're gonna stay where you're at because that's where you're comfortable at. You don't want to push yourself. You don't want to go outside of your comfort zone to learn. So don't sit around. White people, don't sit around waiting for another Trump to come in. Blacks, don't sit around expecting a black president to come and make things better. Make things better yourself. Educate yourself, empower yourself. Learn a trade. Go to school, get the GED. The fact that you have the discipline to go back to school and get your GED, the GED is not going to do anything. The GED is just a piece of paper, but the process of you going and discipline and responsibility, studying, homework, that's the process that's going to take you far, not the actual document. And as far as legalizing immigrants, undocumented, illegally, whatever, that's not going to help them either. And they're going to learn too when the day that they become legal to work or legal for anything, because technically nowadays you don't even need to be documented to work or to own a home or to start a business. You need to be educated. There are plenty of undocumented that own homes, and that's because they took the time to learn the process of buying a home. In school they don't teach you how to buy a house, but if you learn and you teach yourself the percentages and the mortgages and the rates and how loans fluctuate, all that. If you teach yourself to learn all that stuff, you could do it. You don't have to be legal to learn. You don't have to be undocumented or documented to learn. It don't matter. If you want to learn, that's the key to success, is learning and the ability to sit down and study and learn and focus and discipline. So don't sit around and wait for a Mexican president. Don't sit around and wait for a black or white president. No matter what nationality you are, you have to go out and get it yourself. Education is very important, and the actual piece of paper is not important. The actual diploma is not important. It's the process that you learn to get to that piece of paper. The journey is the reward, not the actual piece of paper. The journey is the reward, not the actual paper. Okay, so I don't care if you came 2,000 miles across the border. Once you get here, that's just the beginning. Just because you cross that border, you don't get a better life. It's what you do when you're here that's gonna get you a better life. If you think that leaving your country to come to another one and working in a field is a better life, then that's your own opinion. But that's just not something that I see as a better life. But if you're one of the undocumented that came here and wanted to learn English and wanted to learn a trade and learn and write, you are gonna go far, far, far in this country, regardless if you ever get legalized or not. So learning, folks, that's the key to success in the United States, is education. Go ahead and push that subscribe button. Johnny Johnzell, solo podcaster, over and out.